I think, one, the atrocities that happened, I think that they were probably not as bad as we've been told. And two, the real atrocities, the things that happened that were valid or legitimate, some of them may be directly tied to Hitler, but then some of them were probably also instances where Hitler was like, you need to banish these people. And then someone, close to Hitler was like, banish, wink, wink, and then they go off and, it's entirely plausible that he didn't even know.
Today, the ideas of our National Socialist and Fascist revolution have conquered great and mighty states. My prophecy will be fulfilled that this war will not destroy the Aryan, but instead it will exterminate the Jew. Whatever the struggle may bring, however long it may last, this will be its final result. And only then, after the elimination of these parasites, a long era of international understanding, and therefore of true peace, will come over the suffering world. The Führer once again expressed his determination to clean up the Jews in Europe pitilessly. There must be no squeamish sentimentalism about it. The Jews have deserved the catastrophe that has now overtaken them. Their destruction will go hand in hand with the destruction of our enemies. We must hasten this process with cold ruthlessness. The procedure is a pretty barbaric one, and not to be described here more definitely. Not much will remain of the Jews. On the whole, it can be said that about 60% of them will have to be liquidated, whereas only 40% can be used for forced labor.
Now, my point is just to say that element of the Holocaust has the least primary sources, the least provable data in order to support. So you're taking...
Because there's no evidence left. There's no bodies that are buried.
Correct.
It's a logistical problem. This seems a high quantity of bodies to bury. That's what you're getting at with the least support.
Yes.
So to say the weakest part of it is, it just simply would be logistically impossible.
And yet...
If you simply look at the raw math, and this is math you can do yourself, at the time, it would have taken around 2 hours. And so when you look at the cookie math, it becomes literally impossible for the number of bodies that they claim to have cremated there to have been cremated.
Stonequire actually thinks one crematoria can handle one body at a time. And not only this, they also pretend with the cookie math that all 6 million that were killed were cremated. The claim has never been all 6 million were cremated, or all 6 million were gassed, or that even all 6 million were killed in camps. Let's do some math. Here's a 1943 document, actually pretty early if you're looking at the entire timescale of the Holocaust, and it counts up the total 24-hour operation cremation capacity for the Auschwitz complex, including all of the different crematoria. It records that in a 24-hour period, they could cremate 4,756 people. That's a lot of people, especially for just a 24-hour period. Isn't it also a little bit odd that a report like this would even have been created by the Germans? Can you imagine a scenario where they would have actually needed to know how many bodies they could cremate in just a 24-hour period in a complex like Auschwitz? Man, that would really make a lot of sense if about 60% of the people who got there were killed on site and they had to dispose of the bodies. There's also documents from 1942 about how a total cremation capacity of
2,350
was not sufficient. That's why, according to even more documents, multiple corpses must be packed into the muffle simultaneously in order to cremate at the capacities they were looking for. What's a muffle? I'm so glad you asked. A muffle is where a body is actually cremated in an oven. Lots of ovens have multiple muffles, meaning they can handle multiple bodies at a time. Some of these are described as 3, 5, 8 muffle ovens. And even still, according to this, again, very early 1942 report, multiple corpses had to be packed into a single muffle simultaneously because there were so many corpses that needed to be cremated. Top engineer Paul Erdmann provided the construction office at Mauthausen with a cremation rate of around 33 to 40 minutes per corpse, quote, without overloading, end quote, the referenced 2-muffle oven. In October of 1941, the SS construction office at Auschwitz noted that it had planned for Crematorium 2 to be constructed, and that it was going to have a cremation rate of 30 minutes for 2 corpses. Quote, due to the large number of prisoners, 125,000 written in parentheses, a crematorium is being built. It contains 5 triple muffle ovens, each muffle for 2 persons, so that in 1 hour, 60 persons can be incinerated. In July of 1942, the SS construction office in Auschwitz informed the SS construction office at Stutthof of a specific 3-muffle oven, saying that, quote, incineration takes about half an hour, according to the Topf Company. The Topf Company also filed a patent soon following the war that proves that rapid cremation was obviously possible in this time period. The text of this patent itself states that it was possible in about 30 minutes' time to cremate with this mechanism. So of course, if you just make crap up, then you're not going to be able to come away with an understanding of the situation that makes any sense. The
cookie math
is actually just wrong.
Never mind the fact that there's not a single shred of evidence for any ashes anywhere. The pile of ashes that would have been produced would be visible from space.
One of the reasons why the Germans started using mass cremation were reports like this.
In the Daily Report of October 24, 1942, a German military commander in the Nazi-occupied Poland complains as follows. Supreme Command Ostro informs that the Jews in Treblinka are not adequately buried, and that as a result, an unbearable body stench befouls the air.
In the middle of 1942, Action 1005 was issued. The intent of this action was to exhume corpses and make sure that all future corpses were cremated or disposed of in a way that would not reveal evidence after the war. Now you may be thinking, how on earth were they able to exhume all of those bodies and cremate them? So we never found any corpses. Except we did find a lot of corpses, because they didn't actually exhume all of them and cremate them. There are bones, bodies, ash, mass graves, signs of corpse disposal all over Belzig, Treblinka, Auschwitz main camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, etc. These mass graves have been marked, mapped, studied, and are often discussed by historians. There have been enormous quantities of ash as well as body parts discovered in mass graves around these camps. So like in the rest of this podcast, woe is lying to you here too.
We didn't even liberate any of the extermination camps. The Allies on the Western Front only went so far and discovered concentration camps. You can actually look at the maps that the U.S. National Archives have laid out. It was the Russian side that came through in their invasion from Eastern Europe and came in and found all of the extermination camps. So it's not even like we found the Holocaust
The primary,
camps.
real quick, just to get this right, you're saying that the primary sources for the concentration camps were
The extermination camps.
that those primary sources were provided to us by Bolsheviks?
By the communists.
Great. Okay.
Patton, Churchill, and others never were in extermination camps such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, and the others. Those were on the eastern side in German-occupied Poland where they were purportedly discovered.
Okay. Not a good start.
I want you to first keep in mind something that we mentioned a couple episodes ago about the map of the camps that we're talking about here. We put it in the show notes, and we'll include it in these show notes as well, so you can get a refresher. After World War II ended, and the narrative emerged that the final solution meant murdering all of the Jews in Europe, the story was that there were concentration camps in the West, and then there were death camps in the East. And when you look at a map of the former German-occupied territories, a very conspicuous fact emerges. 100% of the camps that are claimed that no one was industrially murdered were in the Allied places, where we could go after the war with witnesses. 100% of the camps that we're told are murder camps were behind Soviet-controlled lines.
Woe acts like this is some sort of evidence that the Soviets completely fabricated the idea of extermination camps in the East. He says 100%, which actually is true, but there's only 6 camps. He says this like you're supposed to think there's hundreds of them or something. General Patton described what he saw as a murder camp. Western allies were able to visit Majdanek as early as August of 1944, and Western allies did actually liberate several camps with homicidal gas chambers. These just generally aren't considered to be extermination camps because of the scale in the scholarly background. There's a lot of debate between what makes something a pure extermination camp, a partial extermination camp, what is a death camp, etc. For instance, we know that there were tens of thousands of people, some estimates almost 100,000, killed at Mauthausen, which was liberated by Western allies. Polish press even mentioned the existence of the extermination camps during the war, and there's all kinds of evidence that the Western allies knew about the atrocities being committed against Jews during the war too. The extermination camps existed in the East, and we knew about them before the Soviets could have screwed around with any of the history. SS reports from during the war that were analyzing how the Polish people were reacting to their treatment by the Germans actually used the Jews as an example of a group that the Polish population was worried they were going to be treated like, explaining that based on what they had seen as Poles, they had feared they were going to be ethnically exterminated. And other official Nazi documents mention extermination policy explicitly. This one, by a government official, details how if they were an extermination ghetto, they would be able to receive a high concentration of Jews. Otherwise, they couldn't. This document acts as an example of how the concentration of Jews was considered to coincide with their extermination, as a matter of policy. But why would Woe contend with any of that information? If he's completely content with just finding memes off the internet, why would he expend any mental energy at all to address, for instance, Hitler directly calling for the extermination of Jews in speeches, claiming that they're parasites, when all his audience demands is more memes? Why would he ever risk exposing his audience to this kind of information when they don't demand it be addressed?